this is section 6.5, linear inequalities. Things that have an equal sign, they're called equations. If they're inequalities, we have like less than or greater than signs. So let's make sure we're all ready to go. So here we go. A linear inequality is similar to an equation. The difference is equations have that symbol, but inequalities have this symbol, this symbol, this symbol, or this symbol. We'll talk about all those differences. First one is the less than sign. The second one on the top right is the greater than sign. Then we have the less than or equal to, and the greater than or equal to. It can be one or the other. And that's instead of an equation. You won't just see the basic equal sign. The solution is all the points instead of just a line. The solution to an equation is often one number, or in terms of if we graph a line, it can be any point on the line, but here it's going to be a lot of different ones. So the different steps, we're always going to graph the boundary line, and we have to decide, is it going to be a solid line like this, or is it going to be a dashed line? And then many times we'll shade one way or the other. We might shade underneath the line or above the line, and all the points in the shaded area work. And if it's a solid line, they also work on the line or not. And we'll talk about that as we go. So we're going to learn to graph these linear inequalities today. Okay, so here it says, determine whether the ordered pair is a solution of the inequality y is less than x plus 2. We're trying to figure out if this point works. So we're going to take this, it's an x and a y point, we're going to put those in. So instead of y, I'm going to put in 2. Okay? Instead of x, I'm going to put in negative 5. Is 2 less than negative 3? Now remember, if you're like, oh, I don't know, you can go to the idea of a number line. 2 would be over here, and negative 3 would be over here. 2 is actually greater than. 2 is the bigger of the two numbers. So this one is false, or it's not a solution. Okay? That one doesn't work. It will not solve the inequality. But how about 4 comma 6? So y is less than x plus 2. Make sure you put in the correct ones. X, y. Y is 6, x is 4. Is 6 less than 4 plus 2? Is 6 less than 6? And the answer there, again, is that it's false or no. Because 6 isn't less than 6, it's equal to. If this problem had that sign on there, then the answer would be true. But it does not. So this one has to remain as false. It's not the solution. All right, next we're going to graph the inequality. Okay, we just got done with a lot of problems where we graphed. And when we graph, we want to always solve for one letter. We want to solve for y. So in here, 2y minus x greater than or equal to 2. I'm first going to add x. Then we get 2y is greater than or equal to x plus 2. I try to keep it in order where it's mx plus b. Now I'm going to divide every single thing by 2. Y is greater than or equal to 1/2 x plus 1. Now we've got m, we've got b. So can we graph? B is 1, that's called the y-intercept. On our graph, we go up to 1, and we put a dot. From there, we apply the slope, and the slope says we go up 1, right 2, put a new dot. Up 1, right 2, up 1, right 2, up 1, right 2. Now, you have to determine, when you graph these, whether you will put a solid line or a dashed line. And how do I know? you put a solid line when you see one of these. It has to have the equal on it. The dashed line when you see one that doesn't have the equal on it. Okay? So this one has the equal sign on it. Okay, now next. There's two ways to figure out where you shade. There's two possible answers to this. Once you draw a line, it really cuts it into two areas. It could be, don't draw anything, everybody, so wait. It could be that we're going to shade and all these points are answers. Or we could shade and all the points below the line are answers. Now, there's two ways to do it. I'm going to show you the simplest way that I talk about it. And if you understand that, you won't have to do the other way. For me, the simplest way is when it is solved, I look at this and it says y is greater than or equal to. Now, if you can't tell the difference, when we read in English from left to right. We read in math from left to right. So that's the way we read mathematics. The reason that's a greater than sign, this sign is greater because that sign, this side is bigger when I come across. This one is a less than sign because as I read left to right, I hit the little side first as I go. So hopefully that makes some sense. If I'm reading this sign, I say y is, oh, it's the big side, so y is greater than. So if I read this one, it's a greater than sign. This is a less than sign because it's what side I hit as I read from left to right. Okay? So, greater in terms of y. Y goes up and down. If you see a greater than sign, you can put your pencil on the graph and greater shades up because that's the greater y values. So for this one, I will shade up. If it had been the less than sign, if it had been this one, I would shade below the line. And it's that simple. You put your pencil on the line and say greater goes up. And that's the one. It puts you in one of two places where you're going to shade. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, if it doesn't, then you want to do this. You have to pick a point. The easiest test point, I always find, is 0, 0. Now, 0, 0, if I take that and I put it into the equation, you can put it into any of them. I'm going to put it into the original. 2 times 0 minus 0 is greater than 2. 2 times 0, 0 minus 0 is still 0. And is 0 greater than or equal to 2? Is 0 greater than 2? Is it equal to 2? Both answers no. So that test point, which is on this side, did not work. So since it didn't work, I shade the other side. If it did work, then I would shade this side. But since it didn't work, I don't. So the answer is the line, and I shade above it because the test point did not work, and it was below. Okay, next one. Y is less than 3/4 x, sorry, I don't know where I got the negative, plus 2. So you figure out m. M is 3/4, b is 2. We put in a dot. We go up 3 over 4. Up 3 over 4. Now we have to decide, does it have the line on it? If it doesn't have the line, you do not make a solid line when you draw this one. So notice, again, these are our options. We have less than, greater than, less than, equal to, greater than, or equal to. If it has a line underneath it, you will make a solid line. If it looks like this, when you draw the line, you will make it a dashed line. So this one, the symbol in our problem, doesn't have the line. So when we draw the line, it should be dashed. that mean? That means if we land on the line, it actually won't work. Now, we read this one. Y is, as we read across, Y is less. So where is Y less? Is Y less if we go up or if we go down, everyone? Down. So I put my pen on the line, and Y would be less if I go down. So my answers will all be shaded below the line. If I were to use a test point, the test point I try to always use is 0, 0. Now again, if you understood that, you don't have to do the test point. So if you get how to shade, you're good. If you don't, you have to use the test point. I put in 0 for Y, I put in 0 for X, and I get 0 is less than 2. That's true. So since it worked, I would shade on this side because 0, 0 is in that region. If it didn't work, I would have shaded on the other side. So our answer should look as it appears on the screen. All right, the next one to graph. We're going to, again, solve for Y because it's much easier if we solve for Y. So we have 3x minus 4y is less than or equal to 8. We'll subtract 3x. We get negative 4y is less than or equal to negative 3x plus 8. Divide by negative 4. Now, there's a rule with inequalities. If you add or subtract, it doesn't change the signs. If you multiply or divide, it can possibly change the signs. If you multiply or divide by a negative, you switch all signs, including that changes to that, or that changes to that. They flip around. This changes to this. This changes to this. You see how they become the opposite? So in this one, since I'm dividing by a negative, I take this sign and it switches to the greater than sign. A negative over a negative becomes a positive 3/4 x. 8 divided by negative 4 is negative 2. Down 2, we go up 3 over 4. Up 3 over 4. Since it's an equal to, this one has a solid line. But now you read your final. Y is, we hit the big side first as we go across. Y is bigger. So bigger means we shade which way? Up or down? Up. Now, are we understanding that point? I like to do it that way rather than the test point. Is that making sense? Okay? X minus 4 is less than 0. Now, we haven't done an x equal for a while. But first, we're going to solve this by adding 4 to each side, and we get x is less than 4. When you have an x equal equation, first of all, this is the x axis. We go over to where x is 4. Since it is a less than, x is less than 4, since it's that, we will have a dotted or dashed line where x is 4. So this one is a vertical line up and down. Now the problem is we don't have an up or down to shade. And it's the only time we'll have a left or right. Well, there's ways you can look at the other ones that way, but we usually don't. But this one says x is less than 4. If you simply realize which way does the arrow point, these would be the lesser x values. That's the way we would shade that one. Is there shading to the left? X is smaller over there. It's x is less. The lesser values are to the left. The bigger values would be over on the right.